Based on a true story, in the mid-1970s, a passionate show-jumping fan named Serge Durand built a horse training center in Bordeaux, France. He had one obsession above all others, and that was turning his son, Pierre Durand, into a world-class rider. Around that same time, not far away, a black horse named Jappeloup was born. He belonged to a stable owner named Dalio, who raised him partly to comfort his daughter Raphael after her mother left them. Before long, that little horse became the center of Raphael's entire world. As the years went by, Pierre kept training under his father's watchful eye, while Jappeloup was also being raised to become a jumping horse. And slowly, quietly, Raphael and the horse formed a bond that ran incredibly deep. A few years later, Pierre was still chasing his dream of becoming a champion. Serge followed him faithfully from one competition to the next, always right there to support him. Meanwhile, Jappeloup was turning into a very difficult horse. Raphael and her father did everything they could to train him for competition, but the horse just kept refusing to jump. No matter what they tried, he would slam to a stop right in front of every obstacle. Eventually, Dalio started looking for a rider skilled enough to handle the stubborn animal, and his search led him straight to Pierre. But even with Pierre in the saddle, Jappeloup kept acting up and kept refusing his jumps. Pierre lost interest almost immediately. To him, the horse was too small, too skinny, and honestly just not impressive enough. Then in 1978, Pierre competed in a show jumping event in Poland. The competition ended in a terrible accident that left him seriously injured. Watching his son come home battered and exhausted, Serge finally told him to put the ambitions aside and focus on his studies. Pierre still wanted so badly to make his father proud, but in the end, Serge accepted that his son needed to walk away from horses altogether. 2 years later, Pierre had graduated from college and started working as a lawyer. Even so, he and his family never really stopped following the world of horse riding. One day, at a competition, they ran into Dalio, who had come to enter Jappeloup in the tournament. The little black horse was now being ridden by Nadia, an old friend of Pierre's from riding school. Jappeloup still wasn't anything special out there, but he was clearly better than he had been 2 years earlier, back when Pierre had given up on him. Curious about both Nadia and the horse, Pierre quietly went over to talk to her, and the two of them clicked right away. Before long, they were dating, and soon after that, they were officially a couple. Then one day, Pierre spotted Jappeloup arriving at his father's stable. As it turned out, Serge was thinking about buying the horse. Nadia had already grown fond of Jappeloup, and Pierre had heard about the whole plan through her. Deep down, Serge had never really let go of the riding world. He was close friends with Dalio, so he decided to take a chance on the little horse. Raphael, meanwhile, reluctantly helped load Jappeloup into the trailer, even though every part of her hated letting him go. Later on, Pierre opened up to Nadia about the horse and about his father. He admitted that Serge had been crushed when he quit riding all those years ago. But instead of letting it lie, Nadia pushed him to go back to the sport. She truly believed he still had the talent he had once thrown away. So Pierre returned to his father's ranch and came face to face again with the small black horse that used to make him so nervous. This time, when he climbed on, Jappeloup actually jumped. He still needed a mountain of training, but it was enough to light something back up inside Pierre. And seeing his son on horseback again made Serge happier than he had been in years. This was Jappeloup. Pierre soon realized the horse desperately needed grooming, but Jappeloup refused to hold still for any of it. So Serge called Dalio and Raphael over to help. The second Raphael gently calmed him, the horse finally relaxed enough to be groomed properly. Right there, Pierre offered Raphael a job caring for Jappeloup, and she happily said yes. From that point on, Pierre was living 2 lives again, splitting his time between the courtroom and the stable. But over time, he understood something. His love for horses burned just as fiercely as his father's ever had. Eventually, Pierre made the decision that would change everything. He walked away from the law firm he had built with his partner and chose to return fully to competitive riding. With his father's team behind him and Raphael looking after Jappeloup, they got serious about training again. Slowly but surely, Pierre and Jappeloup started winning titles together.
「 together.
「 together. 」
「 together. 」 « 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 together. 」
even if their performances were still shaky from time to time. As life moved forward, Pierre committed himself fully to Nadia, while pouring even more of himself into his riding career. Then in 1982, Pierre got an unexpected phone call from Marcel Rosier, the head coach of the French equestrian team, preparing for the Los Angeles Olympics. Pierre was being invited to join the selection process and train directly under Rosier. With Nadia and his father by his side, Pierre showed up at the training camp. And in that moment, he officially earned a place in the French national team program. In 1982, Pierre Durand and Jappeloup began competing as part of the French national team during the French Cup tournament. The event drew a massive crowd, made even bigger by the presence of famous French actor Jean Rochefort in the stands. The atmosphere got loud and chaotic, and somewhere in all that noise, Pierre thought he heard the starting bell. Without a second of hesitation, he launched into the course. The problem was, the judges hadn't actually signaled the start yet. Just like that, Pierre and Jappeloup were disqualified for a false start. The crowd turned on him fast, and Pierre furiously protested the ruling. But the judges wouldn't budge, and the two of them were forced to leave the arena in complete humiliation. Backstage, Pierre absolutely lost it. He was livid that he had embarrassed himself at such an important event. That humiliating moment haunted him for a long time afterward, and it lit a fire under him to prove himself to the entire country. At the very next tournament, still on home soil, the French team fought their way into the finals. While the other riders huddled around Marcel Rosier for instructions, Pierre focused entirely on the course itself. He studied every single obstacle, pacing out the distances between the jumps over and over. It was obvious he was taking this one deadly seriously. The rider before Pierre was Joseph Orlando, who finished with just one mistake in a strong time, putting him temporarily in first place. Then it was finally Pierre and Jappeloup's turn. Pierre entered the arena completely dialed in. Together, he and the little black horse cleared obstacle after obstacle, from the low jumps to the highest barriers, through the water challenges, and even the tight combinations packed dangerously close together. This time, they didn't make a single mistake. Not only did they turn in a flawless round, they beat Joseph Orlando's time too. Afterward, the people closest to them came running. Pierre celebrated with Nadia, while Jappeloup was welcomed by Raphael. In that moment, Pierre and his little horse finally lived up to everything Marcel Rosier and the French public had hoped for. They locked in their place as one of France's biggest hopes for the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. Even so, the French media kept questioning whether Pierre and Jappeloup were truly consistent enough for the international stage. And Pierre didn't stay quiet about it. He openly called out the media for constantly tearing down their own national team instead of getting behind them. Then came Los Angeles. Just 24 hours before the Olympic competition began, tension boiled over inside the French camp. The riders clashed with head coach Marcel Rosier over the brutal training schedule. A lot of them felt the horses were being pushed way too hard before the event even started. And Pierre was one of the loudest voices in that argument. In the end, Marcel got fed up and backed off entirely, letting the riders prepare however they wanted. The next day, the Olympic competition finally arrived. Everyone was already talking about the showdown between Jappeloup and Touch of Class, the powerful horse ridden for the American team. Next to the rest of the field, Jappeloup was seen as the underdog. Pierre still lacked international experience, and his horse was noticeably smaller than most of the competition. Joe Vargas went first and delivered a strong ride, clearing nearly everything with only a single mistake. Then it was Jappeloup's turn. Before the event, Marcel Rosier had already apologized to Pierre for their argument the day before. He told him to just ride the way he always did. Even then, Marcel was only really hoping for a bronze. But the Olympic course was far tougher than anything they had faced back home. The jumps were higher, the gaps were wider, and the pressure was crushing. Right from the very first obstacle, Jappeloup nearly failed. He fought his way through the next few, but it was clear the horse was already running out of steam. Reading the situation, Pierre tried to pull back and guide him through the lower obstacles before going after the big ones again. But by then, Jappeloup had nothing left in the tank. He suddenly refused, and the stop sent Pierre flying off his back. And just like that, France's greatest hope was knocked out of the competition without even a bronze to show for it. Pierre was completely shattered. Back in France, he sank into a deep depression. And then, out of nowhere, he made a drastic decision. He announced he was quitting horse riding for good and selling Japaloop. As luck would have it, Joe Vargas's father had already put in an offer to buy the horse. Pierre convinced himself that coming back to horses had been a huge mistake. In his mind, he had thrown away his law career only to end up humiliated in front of the whole world. Nadia, the very person who had talked him into riding again, was deeply hurt by the way he was acting. To her, he was blaming everyone else for his disappointment, even though Japaloop had already given him so much success and carried him all the way to the Olympic stage. Still, as frustrated as she was, Nadia respected his right to make his own choice. But she made one thing crystal clear. Pierre needed to stop looking for someone else to blame for his failure. After hearing Nadia out, Pierre found himself confronted once more, this time by his father. Serge reminded him that he had loved horse riding since he was a boy. He told his son to stop pretending he had only come back to the sport for the people around him. The way Serge saw it, a man with that kind of mindset would never succeed at anything. Instead of blaming everyone else for his downfall, Pierre needed to take a hard look at himself and get better. Serge believed his son should be training harder for the next Olympics, not selling a gifted horse over one painful loss. But despite it all, Pierre still went ahead with selling Japaloop. To him, taking the money felt a lot more realistic than chasing a dream that had already crushed him once. Sometime later, Joe Vargas showed up at the stable to inspect Japaloop in person. Raphael was asked to help prepare the horse, but she flat out refused. She couldn't stomach the idea of Pierre selling him away. Even so, the deal moved forward. Documents were drawn up, medical checks were done, and the contracts were signed. Through all of it, Japaloop stayed at the stable waiting to eventually be shipped to America by Pierre himself. And soon after, the Durand stable fell strangely quiet. Then one day, Serge Durand suddenly collapsed from a heart attack. A heavy smoker for years, he passed away without warning, leaving Pierre absolutely devastated. Not long after, Pierre got a phone call from Joe Vargas, who offered his condolences and also passed along Japaloop's medical results. The blood tests had come back showing signs of pyroplasmosis. It wasn't considered dangerous, but the horse would still need treatment. Joe Vargas was waiting on Pierre's final confirmation for the sale, but the days kept passing with no answer. Deep down, Pierre couldn't bring himself to let go of what now felt like the last living piece of his father. Around that same time, Nadia gave birth to their child, and for the very first time, Pierre started to understand what it meant to be a father himself. Almost immediately, he picked up the phone, called the American rider, and canceled the sale. But when Pierre tried working with the horse again, Japaloop wanted nothing to do with him. Realizing he couldn't do this alone, Pierre went back to Raphael and asked her to return as Japaloop's caretaker. This time, though, she wasn't about to welcome him back so easily. The way she saw it, Pierre had spent years caring about nothing but medals, money, and his career. In all that time, he had never once truly connected with the horse outside of competition. To Raphael, it was almost absurd that a national champion still didn't understand horses at all. She told him that horses need trust, not just commands and pressure. And according to her, that was the real reason Japaloop had refused to jump back at the Olympics. This time, Pierre finally got it. And for the first time in years, he promised he would genuinely try to build a real bond with his horse. By January 1985, Japaloop was being brought out of the stable again, so Pierre could start rebuilding their connection from the ground up. Under Raphael's guidance, the black horse grew calmer and easier to handle. Before long, Pierre was even able to groom and trim him on his own. Little by little, things finally started to feel steady again. As Japaloop learned to trust his owner once more, the two of them returned to jump training. And over time, the partnership between horse and rider slowly climbed back to where it had once been. Eventually, Pierre rejoined the French national team and earned a spot representing France at the European Championships in Germany. During warm-ups, Pierre asked Marcel Rosier to adjust the obstacles and make the jumps tougher for practice. Then he set off to test the course with Japaloop. But at the second obstacle, everything went wrong. Japaloop landed badly and twisted his left leg. Raphael screamed for a doctor as panic swept through the arena. After examining the horse, the doctor explained that Japaloop was lucky to have such a powerful build. He was still cleared to compete, though he would clearly be in pain that day. The moment Pierre heard that, he withdrew from the competition on the spot. He refused to force his horse to keep jumping while he was hurting. Not long after, one of Pierre's teammates went to check the obstacle setup and discovered something shocking. The distance between two of the jumps Marcel had arranged was dangerously short. That mistake was exactly what had caused Japaloop's injury. When Pierre found out, he exploded at Marcel Rosier. As far as he was concerned, the coach had gone too far this time. Pierre quit the French national team right then and there, swearing he would never come back as long as Marcel was head coach. But without the financial backing of the national team, Pierre suddenly found himself scraping to survive. He spent his days chasing sponsors everywhere he could, but with no titles and no longer part of the team, nobody wanted anything to do with him. Life got hard for the family, especially now that he and Nadia had a child to raise. Nadia was forced to become the one bringing in money, while Pierre still had no steady income. Then one night, Pierre got a surprising call from the French Federation. Marcel Rosier had officially resigned. The new coach Bernard Caron personally invited Pierre to come back to the national team. By 1986, the French team walked into the World Equestrian Championships in Barcelona with a much healthier atmosphere throughout the squad. France was now seen as a genuine contender, and Pierre and Jappeloup had become the team's greatest hope. The competition finally began. France fought its way into the top 4, earning a shot at Great Britain for the bronze medal. Pierre was chosen as the final rider for the team. One obstacle in particular would decide the whole thing: a massive water jump that nobody had cleared all tournament long. The team manager warned Pierre not to risk it, but Pierre trusted Jappeloup completely. When his turn came, he entered the arena and guided the horse through obstacle after obstacle with laser focus. Then came the giant water jump. And somehow, Jappeloup cleared it perfectly. In that moment, it became obvious. When an animal truly trusts its owner, it will push itself right to the very edge of what it can do. Thanks to that ride, France walked away with the bronze medal. The next day came the individual competition to crown the best rider of the entire tournament. Based on everything he had done throughout the championship, Pierre went in ranked in first place. But this individual category came with a strange twist. The riders had to swap horses. That meant Pierre would ride his opponent's horse while the Canadian rider would take Jappeloup. During his run, Pierre made 2 costly mistakes. But when the Canadian climbed onto Jappeloup, something unexpected happened. He turned in a flawless, clear round without a single error. And in the end, Pierre had to hand the individual title over to the Canadian rider. That defeat forced Pierre to face a hard truth. For all his recent success, his own skills still hadn't quite caught up to Jappeloup's raw talent. Unfortunately, that painful realization was only the start. Not long after, disaster struck again when the French team's horse trailer suddenly caught fire at a highway rest stop. Pierre and the others rushed in to save the horses trapped inside. Jappeloup was the last one still in the burning trailer. By the time they reached him, the inside was thick with smoke and flames. Terrified and frantic, Jappeloup bolted straight out onto the road, throwing everyone into chaos. The horse thrashed wildly in pain and fear while the whole team scrambled to calm him down. But in the end, Pierre managed to settle him. Then 2 more years slipped by. Pierre and Jappeloup kept building their legacy together in the world of show jumping. And at last, the moment arrived to chase the dream Pierre had carried since he was a boy, an Olympic gold medal. In the 2 years since Barcelona, the two of them had grown into one of the strongest horse and rider partnerships anywhere in the world. Pierre himself had matured enormously as a rider, and together they were now real favorites to win it all. Still, one final challenge stood in their way. The night before the competition, while everyone else relaxed and celebrated together, Pierre quietly slipped away to the stable to be alone with Jappeloup. He wanted to strengthen their bond one last time before the biggest day of their lives. The next morning, Pierre walked into the Olympic arena completely locked in. He was so focused he barely even noticed his own wife standing nearby. Then the competition began. Together, Pierre and Jappeloup cleared one enormous Olympic obstacle after another. Only once did they come anywhere close to a mistake. Beyond that, their performance was nearly perfect. Pierre had become a far wiser, far more experienced rider, and Jappeloup now trusted his owner more completely than ever before. And at long last, they delivered a flawless, clear round. Pierre Durand had officially won Olympic gold, fulfilling the dream he had chased since childhood, while honoring the wish of his late father. It had been a long and painful road, full of sacrifice, failure, and redemption. But in the end, both rider and horse got the ending they truly deserved. After the Olympics, Pierre and Jappeloup went on dominating the world of show jumping, right up until the horse's retirement in 1991. Sadly, the legendary Jappeloup passed away later that same year at the Durand stable, the very place where his whole journey had first begun. And to honor everything he had achieved, the French government later built a monument of Jappeloup outside the French Olympic Museum. So the moral of the story is sometimes the ones who carry our dreams the longest are not people, but loyal hearts that stay beside us until the very end. And we only realize their true value when we almost lose them forever.